It is swim jig season, boys and girls. If the bass are up shallow, you need to have this tied on. Let's talk about it.
Right off the base of that tree. Man, this is so fun. Let's go.
Guys, it is spawn out here on the Tennessee River. These fish are moving up, getting super active. It was raining all day. I'm soaking wet, but that did not stop these shallow spawning bass from eating the old swim jig. Now guys, I love old school fishing. You may or may not know that. I get a lot of hate because I use the live scope a good bit, but I'm definitely not a live scoper. But this is where I thrive. Shallow fishing, spawn, March, April, May, I love it. I love getting to get up shallow. Now, I love them offshore fish too, but when I can swim a jig up shallow, man, that just makes my heart melt, guys. I love it. So guys, this is a technique that I have a lot of confidence in, and it's a really great technique for covering water. I turn the trolling motor up, not super high because, you know, if I'm up shallow and these fish are spawning, then you're gonna wanna be sneaky, but trolling motor on 3 or 4, cruise the bank, covering water, starting up at the mouths of these pockets and creeks and stuff and working back until I stop getting bit or start getting bit. But anyways, the swim jig is a perfect bait for covering water. And you know, I like targeting these shallow spawning areas with weed beds, brush and stuff today. It really depends. Today they've been holding up against the wood real tight, and you can do kind of like a 1-2 punch. Use the swim jig to cover water, and if these fish are kind of nipping at it or not really committing to it good, then swap to like the Texas rigger, something that you can pitch and really pinpoint your cast and keep the bait in that area longer. It really seems like they like this swim jig being sporadic, moving right at the surface of the water. And this is the swim jig right there. This is made by Tightline Jigs. It's a 1/2 ounce swim jig, and I really like that heavier jig. That way I can control it more. I can bring it up to the surface, or I can let it fall if I'm a little bit deeper water, but and it seems to come through the weeds a little bit better. But I will throw 3/8 if I'm getting hung up on, you know, fishing some of that like crappy grass where you get hung up, like that pond scum and stuff. But for the most part, I like the 1/2 ounce jig. And here in a second, I'll do on the water demonstration of how I like to fish this jig. But real quick, I want to highlight this is going to be a very visual presentation, visual technique. And what I mean by that is you're going to want to watch the bait the whole time. If you're fishing this shallow, you're going to want to be able to see that bait. And so I like to do the Alabama shake, where I cast it out there and I pop the rod and reel at the same time. So pop, reel, pop, reel, pop, reel, and I keep a slack line. It's really important on getting an efficient hook set. But anyways, that's a 1/2 ounce Tightline jig. You're gonna want this bait on top of the water, or right below the surface. At least that's the way I like to fish it. And so the X-Zone adrenaline bug, or adrenaline crawl, excuse me, it's got these floating tails, and that's what is really important about this bait. And I think that's why I catch a lot more using this as opposed to somebody else that gets in the boat throwing the same jig but with a different trailer. This adrenaline crawl really helps with the buoyancy of the bait and keeps it up. And it's just really aggressive. It's got those really aggressive flapping tails on it. And the fish today just could not stand it. They got absolutely pissed off at it, destroying the bait as I'm bringing it through the brush, which I think they were on bed. A lot of them had bloody tails, but absolutely great technique. So let's go catch some fish and talk about it.
I lined him. Get in here. Oh my gosh, that was awesome, dude. I pitched it in there and I was watching my bait swim out, and I just seen that fish swim all the way from this tree and just side swipe it. I mean, that is awesome. All right guys, we got our little water bottle right there, propping the trolling motor up, keeping us from having to adjust the trolling motor up and down. But anyways guys, so we're back here in this spawning pocket, and there's a bunch of cover. As you see, we got weed beds right here, we got some buck brush right there. There's a little bit of eelgrass and stuff in here that mixes out here a little bit deeper. But when you're fishing this swim jig, it's a real visual type presentation. And what I mean by that is I always want to keep my eye on the bait, because I'm fishing shallow water. So a lot of times I can, you know, I'm only fishing 1 to 2 foot, sometimes less than 1 foot. So I can see that bait for the most part. And so I like to cast it out there. I get as close to the structure as I can, whether I'm fishing the bushes or these weed beds or something. And you know, I'm gonna watch my bait as I bring it back in, because a lot of times you can see that fish trail it, and you can either slow it down, burn the bait a little bit more, or you know, you see that fish, you draw it out, and you're like, okay, he's not wanting to commit to the swim jig, so then we're gonna pick up the Texas rig or something slow, you know. So just paying attention to your bait is really important. And you know, I really like to keep it simple. I do really two retrieves for the most part. But anyways, guys, I like to throw it out there, and right when it hits the water, I start twitching it. It's a presentation that you got to be really in sync with. So what I like to do is I like to shake the rod and reel, shake the rod, reel, shake the rod and reel. But one thing that you got to keep in mind that is super important is you want to keep slack in your line. That way, you know, you're not fishing a tight line, and whenever you're working the bait, if you're fishing a tight line, you might, there's a fish right there. Let me get back in there. About ripped the rod out of my hand. But anyways, guys, before I was rudely interrupted by that fish, you want to keep a slack line. That way, when a fish hits it, you're not ripping it out of its mouth. You want to let that fish kind of turn and get a good bite on that bait, get it down its mouth, or get the bait in a position that you're going to be able to set the hook and have a successful hookup on it. But anyways, I like that twitch, pop, twitch, or twitch, reel, pop, twitch, reel, whatever you want to call it. But it's real synchronized. And you know, I've been doing this for a while, so I mean, I've got it down packed, but when I first started doing it, I was like, what the heck am I doing? But anyways, they call that the Alabama shake, or that's what I like to call it. And when you get in a little bit deeper water, you know, a couple feet, or when you're bringing this bait out closer to your boat as the water gets deeper, I'll bring my rod tip down and kind of give it some of those harder pops like that. And what it's doing in the water is this bait is popping, and the skirt is kind of flaring. So it's kind of like jump, kind of like a brim darting, you know, off structure and stuff. And this trailer really makes a difference. That's an X-Zone, and these crawls float. So it really helps the buoyancy of this bait staying up in the water, because you want to keep it up. You want to keep it off the bottom, off the silt and stuff. You want that fish to be aggressive, because most of the time when you're catching these fish on a swim jig, they're not going to be bedders. They're going to be your cruising fish that are cruising around. But you know, you will occasionally catch a bedder, but for the most part, I'm just blind casting around these banks that I know these fish are on. And one way that, you know, if it's a strong indication that these fish are on bed, most of the time I'm going to swap to a Texas rig or something that I can punch with or pitch with. But you can also throw it where you're getting bit, because a lot of times they'll just come up and nip at it like they're not really wanting it. And so you can slow it down and just drag it like a football head jig. Now, I don't really like doing this because this bait picks up a lot of silt and stuff off the bottom, a bunch of trash. You know, these areas right here have a bunch of leaves and just trash on the bottom. Oh my gosh, dude, he ran out with that thing. Dude, that felt like a good one as soon as it hit the water. There's a bunch of fish in here, guys, so I'm gonna get back to fishing.
So guys, I like to keep it simple. I throw one color about 90% of the time, and that's the black and blue. If you can't find any black and blue, go find blue and black. It's virtually the same thing. I'm dumb. But anyways, black and blue is the go-to. A lot of times this water is gonna be muddy, but even if the water's a little bit clear, you can still catch them on black and blue. But I like it a little bit stained water. This water back here is kind of tan. It got that brown hue to it, and the black and blue is awesome. And you can actually see your bait surprisingly well, the black and blue. But another bait, or another color that I like, is the white, straight up white. Obviously, you're gonna be able to see the white better coming through the muddy water. And a lot of guys like white for bed fishing, obviously. The fish eat it good, and plus you can see it better with your eyes as you're working a fish on bed or bringing it through cover, whatever the case may be. But guys, I'm gonna throw this black and blue swim jig about 90% of the time, and I tend to go more to the white into post spawn, and if I'm fishing like shallow main river weed beds or stuff in the summertime, and in the fall, the white's gonna be my go-to, just because these fish, you know, there's gonna be a bunch of bait fish pushed up in these weed beds and stuff. And obviously after the fish spawn, of course there's gonna be the brim feeders that are gonna be feeding on the black and blue, but they're gonna really start keying in on shad very heavily as they start pushing out, getting offshore and stuff. So that's why I'm gonna pick up the white. And same trailer, the Exxon Lures Adrenaline Crawl, and I've actually got the smaller version. I think this is a 3-inch and this is a 4-inch, if I believe. But on this black and blue, I really like that the bigger bait, and this it just pairs well because it disperses a lot of water with those tails kicking, and the way this jig is designed is it flares out and really disperses a lot of water, and I think that's why these fish just get so mad at it and want to eat it. But guys, equipment is really important, because when you're sitting there shaking that rod, it can get tiring if you're doing it all day, and that's why having the perfect rod setup, all your equipment, rod, reel, line, it's really going to play into effect to reduce that, you know, your fatigue out there on the water if you're doing this all day. Because sitting there shaking it and then ripping the fish out of the heavy cover, man, it'll wear you out in a day, especially if you're fishing multiple days in a row. So I like the Duckett Micro Magic Pro 7-foot heavy, or excuse me, 7-foot medium heavy. It's a really stiff rod, but it's got a very flexible tip. That way I can sit there and shake it, but whenever I set the hook, if it's in cover, you know, I have enough stiffness in that rod that I can jerk that fish out of there and get it in the boat quickly. And then I just like a 7-to-1. Any mid-range gear ratio is good if you want to do a little bit quicker. That way you can burn it and get that bait back in and really swim it on top of the water if you're throwing like a heavier bait or something. But 7-1-1, that's my go-to. This is a Lew's speed spool. And then here's something that I do different. I throw fluorocarbon. Fluorocarbon helps you get a lot more bites. I know anytime a lot of guys get up in this shallow, thick cover, they like to swap to braid. And you know, I try to stay away from the braid if I can, just because the fluorocarbon really helps you get more bites, especially if the water's a little bit clearer. But I use 15-pound Berkeley Trilane 100% fluoro. And guys, this is the best equipment that I've found. I love swimming a jig. I do it every spring. I throw a white swim jig up in the weed beds, like in the summer and fall time, especially if I'm fishing the Coosa River or something where these fish stay shallow for the most part year round. But guys, I highly recommend you start throwing a swim jig if you haven't. I hope these tips today in this video help you catch your biggest swim jig fish ever. And guys, I want to thank you so much for watching this video. Make sure to smash the like button, subscribe to the channel, check out the links to Tightline Jigs and Exxon Lures down in the description and pick you up the same exact jig and trailer combo that I have, and then go to Duckett's website, get this rod. Support the companies that support me and keep me out here on the water making these videos for you guys. But guys, I want to thank you again. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next one.